talk a little bit about Northrop, but before that, I want to explain how this whole thing is going to work. You guys have seen the reality talent show kind of the deal. Well, this is sort of the computer science version of that. What do? We give presentations. So what we have is 6 of your colleagues who are going to stand up and give 10-minute presentations. The theme this year is sort of broad, sort of topics, ideas for computer science for the future. We've got some ideas maybe about engineering or development, maybe some research ideas, maybe ideas about what we can do in academics. And what we have are the 6 best ideas that were presented to the committee of this organization. And so they're going to present 10 minutes long. After that, we're going to get some commentary from our celebrity judges. Yes, thank you, Tim. So why don't I take this moment to introduce our celebrity judges. First of all, Dr. Lolo Pinedo. She is a distinguished technical fellow at Northrop Grumman. Among other things, she's been an editor of IEEE Transactions on Software Engineering and a distinguished visitor of the IEEE Computer Society. And she is are you the chair of the alumni board? No. No, okay. But she is on the alumni board, and that is why we have organizations like Northrop here and other companies to fund the department on research, scholarships, and events like this. And this has been funded by Dr. Pinedo's organization for the last 2 years. It's been a lot of fun. Our next distinguished celebrity judge, true celebrity, Dr. Leonard Kleinrock. Of course, you know, he is one of the fathers of the internet, influential queuing theory and packet, the foundation of packet theory. He's won the National Medal of Science. I don't think anyone else here has done that. And the Dan David Prize. And sitting next to him is Dr. Eddie Kohler, who's well known for the Click Modular Router, the Asbestos Operating Systems Project, and an influential paper on unsubscribing from Americans. How this is going to work is, as I said, everyone's going to give their presentations. We'll get commentary, constructive. We like this, we didn't like that, you should have done this, etc., etc. You know, it might not be all nice comments. It might be. We'll just have to see. It's up to our judges. What your job is to listen to everybody, stick around, think about who you thought did the best job, who had the best ideas, who gave the best presentation, and at the end,
Anyway, very briefly, because we want to get to the, does it move? Maybe somebody sits there and flips.
Sure.
I want to just give you a very, very quickly tell you a few things about Northrop Grumman. I've worked there for 30 years. And I thought of leaving a couple of times, but I found a lot of challenges for me there. And I've worked in all different kinds of things, mostly technology related. And as you can see on your left there's a lot of areas. This is just a few of the areas we work on, but very spread out. It's a big company. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is we do a lot of things for the military, but we do a lot of things for civil too, state and local. And the health informatics, I got a cheat here because I don't know a lot about it. And I asked somebody to send me because I think this is an area that a lot of you may be interested in. So we do solution services and systems for drug discovery and research, enhance healthcare delivery, safeguard public health information through assessments and alerts. And in the public health organization area, we do work related to epidemiology, biostatistics, emergency preparedness and response, occupational and environmental health, and communications education. And we are the highest IT contractor for the Centers for Disease Control. So there's a lot of work that is not military. Now, unfortunately, we only hire citizens now. But we have a wide, as you can see, areas that you can choose to work on. And I put at the end there, naval shipbuilding used to be one of our big sectors. If you can go to the next one. And we sold it as of last Friday. So I kept it in the chart. But we have 4 operating sectors. And going from left to right, the aerospace, of course, does low and high space stuff, satellites. And you can see a lot of the areas. I'm not going to go into, you can read it. We do UAVs. And then we have the electronic systems, a lot of radar, embedded radar for surveillance that gets put in airplanes. On the rightmost here is a technical service. This is the least technical area. They do a lot of maintenance, training of systems, products, airplanes, and things of that sort. And right in the middle, where the Future Technical Leader Program comes from, is the information systems sector. That's where I work, and that's where we are hiring for this special program. As you can see, we do a lot of work for the intelligence, surveillance. This is more classified work. We have non-classified, of course. I don't have any classification, actually. I do more technology related. Command and control systems, enterprise systems, Homeland Security, and the health, as I talked about. Next chart. And just to show you examples of some of our products, to show you the variety. Of course, I said the shipbuilding got sold, but we have the nuclear submarines that we built down here. UAVs, you may have heard about Global Hawk, that is flying 24/7 everywhere, and it is in Japan too. And hopefully today, I bet it was up there when they had their earthquake. Thank God, no tsunami. But today was bad too, 7.1 from what I heard. We had carriers, so that the airplanes, they fly from. And around it, all on the top, I don't know if you can see, we do UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles too. And these are now being used for different things, to go and explore IEDs, bombs, to do exploration in caves too. So let's see, going from down, we have a lot of information systems. Coming down here, satellites I mentioned, radar, this is for air defense. Over here is a system I worked on that almost every tank that is deployed now is a GPS-based systems for situation awareness, so you know where everybody is and the enemies that you know about. Has saved a lot of lives, and I worked that project. And then you've got your climate or Homeland Defense, the centers. And the one with the mirror there, the yellow one, is a James Webb observatory that is being built now for the future. Fantastic thing. We are building this as part of the AS sector with NASA, JPL, and we're the prime. And that is an amazing, amazing technology. If you ever get a chance to come visit, sometimes we get visits going on there. Anyway, these are some of the products. Very quickly, we'll move on. Let me talk about this Future Technical Leader Program. It's a great program we started a few years ago. I want to introduce you, Aaron. Raise your hand. Aaron is UCLA alumni who is part of our program. You've been with us, what, 1 year? 1 year. So if you want to hear from him, he's one of them, part of the program. It's a 3-year rotation program when you join the company, because the goal is that the future technical leaders are to be our VPs, chief engineers of the future. So we do fast training, mentoring, and the rotation opportunity to visit different places. Masters and PhDs, now it's a very, very selective program. We select, it used to be 10, now we're up to 20 from the top universities. We have like 15 if we go to the next chart. You can see some of the universities there, so we only take 1, maybe 2 from universities, sometimes none. So it's a very selective program. If you are in the top 10% of your peers, greater than 3.5 GPA, master's or PhD in the future, come talk to us, or my email will be on the charts too. Tell us about your interest. Doesn't need to be this year. It can be in the future too. Then we can tell you more about the program and the organization. Many areas too. All right. And what I want to say too is I'm talking about this program, but even if you don't join the program, because it is very selective, we have a career path and we have a lot of opportunities with a lot of challenges, as I told you in the very beginning. So I encourage you to explore. We are always hiring good people, and just keep in touch. And there are many, many opportunities. So just that's what we're looking for, and you can get a hold of these charts. Keith will have it available with the URLs and the email if you want to send. And there's plenty of videos online that you can take a look and see. Okay? No questions now. I'll be around a little bit at the end because they want to move on. And thank you for organizing this. And I left some things here if you want to take some CDs and information.
Thank you, Dr. Pinedo. And I know from experience that she is very responsive to email, so if you don't get a chance to talk to her today, definitely shoot her an email. Keith, were you going to give away any t-shirts?
Yes, we are.
So did you have a plan for that? How about this? Let's have a little geek trivia question. Raise your hand if you know the answer. Oh, we got it. Okay. And the pointer. So raise your hand if you know the answer, and then Keith will decide who to throw something at. So everybody knows foo and bar are the first 2 standard medicine practice variables. What is the third? Judges can.
Is this the click?
Yep, and teachers can. Anybody? Nobody knows?
No,
Yes. You win. And I guess you have to go find your shirt. Yeah. All right. Well, the next guy is giving the talk. I'm about to introduce him. I will think up another quizzy question for you. This is Gautam Prasad. He is a 4th-year PhD student. The title of his presentation is Medical Image Analysis, and I will let you take it away.
Okay, thank you, Peter, for that introduction. I was going to open with a joke about how there are a few real-world practical problems that we can apply computer science tools to, and that what I present will introduce a new exciting one, but with Professor Kleinrock as a judge, I think it brings to mind how important the creation of the internet is and how much it affects all of our lives. My talk today will discuss how we apply computer science to further the field of medical image analysis. My name is Gautam Prasad. I work at the Laboratory of Neuroimaging in the medical school here at UCLA with Professors Paul Thompson in neurology and Professor Dimitri Terzopoulos in computer science. I will tell you how we can use the tools and methods available to us as computer scientists to further the field of medical image analysis, which lies at the convergence of medicine, statistics, mathematics, and of course, computer science. I'll discuss two major problems that we encounter in medical image analysis. The first is understanding the structure of our brain, and the second is segmenting or delineating the brain in whole head images. Both of these pertain to neuroscience. And then for each of these problems, I'll discuss why they're important, how we currently solve them with computer science techniques, future work in each of them, and ramifications of the methods, and then summarize the relationship between computer science and medical image analysis and future opportunities that the field presents. We can understand the structure of our brains using diffusion-weighted imaging. And what this imaging modality does is it tracks the local diffusion of water in the tissue in our brains. And what we can do is we can follow paths of highest diffusion in these images to create fibers. These fibers roughly correspond to the axons in our brain, which are located in functional regions. For example, if we do this analysis in the front part of our brain, or the frontal lobe, we can understand the area of our brain that mediates our speech. And we can do this for a population of subjects. So we can gain statistically significant structural information about how our brain varies depending on how we age, depending on the differences in gender or disease. This pipeline gives an overview of the method that we developed to understand these diffusion-weighted images. And though it may seem complicated, the takeaway point is if you looked in the top left corner, it's an image of the fibers that we can calculate from these images. From those, we select a fiber bundle that is located within a functional region within the brain, and then represent this fiber bundle using a maximum density path. This path follows points within the bundle of maximum density of fibers. We'll focus exactly how we calculate this maximum density path from the fiber bundle. This slide depicts on the left how the fibers we selected from the entire brain space that compose a particular functional area of the brain. From this, we create a density image where every voxel or 3D pixel is denoted with a value corresponding to the number of fibers that intersect that three-dimensional volumetric space. From that, we create a graph where each node represents a positive valued density value from our corresponding density image, and connect those nodes using an edge weighted by the inverse of the sum of the corresponding densities of the two nodes that it connects. And that might seem complicated, but basically it's saying that if we select two nodes in that graph and find the shortest path between the two, that path will follow nodes of highest density. Does anyone know how we could calculate the shortest path between two nodes in this graph? What was that? Yeah, exactly. Dijkstra. Anyone else? Well, I mean, the answer's out. Okay. And once we've calculated all these paths in a group of subjects, our future work will take these paths and register them into the same space. And what this affords us is a point-wise correspondence across all of these paths. And from that, we can calculate significant geometric variation across our data set. And what this means is, imagine you have a population that's split up into Alzheimer's patients and healthy normal controls. You calculate paths from in all of these subjects, register them together, find correspondences, and then what you can do is you can look at a representative path in your whole population and look at specific areas on that path and come up with quantitative probabilistic significance of if that area of the path changes depending on whether you have Alzheimer's disease or whether you're healthy. The second problem I will discuss is segmenting the brain in whole head magnetic resonance images. It's basically telling exactly where the brain is in an image. And without the tools that we have in computer science, in many cases, this wouldn't be feasible. This picture depicts exactly what we're doing. The background is in red is our magnetic resonance image. The green is a delineation of where the brain is located. We call this segmentation process skull stripping, and it's useful in understanding how our brain is affected by disease or aging, in extracting the surface of our brain, in registering two images together, and in surgical planning. Traditionally, it's done manually by experts trained in anatomy who go slice by slice in these volumetric images and trace out the boundary of the brain. But this is a time-consuming process and may not be consistent across tracers. We solve this problem using deformable organisms, which create high-level control mechanisms by borrowing ideas from the field of artificial life. And they do this by combining sensing, reactive behavior, proactive planning, and knowledge representation to create a high-level plan that allow our organisms that we develop to cooperatively segment an image. This particular plan is the one we developed for skull stripping. What you can glean from this figure is we've created 4 different organisms, 1 for the skin, 2 for the eyes, and 1 for the brain. Each has specific goals and objectives they need to accomplish. And they extract salient information from the image and work together to compile that into a method to delineate where the brain is located. This slide goes into more depth of our skull stripping plan. And we parameterize each of our organisms as a 3D triangulated mesh, with each having upwards of 100,000 nodes. We use a complex method of constraints and sensing of the images that they're embedded in to dictate how we move all the vertices in the meshes to deform them to model whatever region that they're trying to find. One important aspect of this is it's very computationally expensive, meaning we have to develop efficient algorithms that leverage all of our processing power and memory. And the use of parallelism is critical in being able to run this computation on thousands of brains and come up with neuroscience conclusions that will extract information from a large cohort of subjects. Our future work will involve using the extensibility of this framework because it allows us to customize our plan and our organisms for images that have problems. For example, we could have blurry images. We could have images that have certain areas cropped out, resulting because of scanner difficulties. And we may have tumors in our images. And we can develop our organisms so that they work and account for the problems in the image to extract information from other areas. The field of medical image analysis is burgeoning. There's so many problems that have not been addressed. And simple techniques like a path search algorithm or parallelism are critical in expanding this field. All it takes is for any of you to use the methods and tools at your fingerprints and apply them to these medical imaging problems to further the field today. Thank you for your attention.
Actually, yes, we want to keep you guys in line, I believe. We'll get used to this. pass it around.
Okay. Hello? Okay. Good presentation, very good presentation. First off, a couple notes very quickly. Don't suck up to the judges. Don't do it so obviously, at least. That was a little on the harsh side. That puts it in a weird place for the rest of the talk. You also burnt about 30 seconds on that joke. You have a particular style, which I think it would help you to watch, which is a particular hand gesture that looks like this, where your hand is sort of tense, and your hand bounces with every syllable you speak. You speak much slower when giving the presentation than you do when answering a question, and there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on almost every word. That style is going to be difficult for people to listen to. It's going to be difficult for people to get into the flow. This is a medical imaging talk. Medical imaging, I was like, where are the awesome pictures? You spent about 90 seconds on an outline slide with no pictures on it at all. One of the wonderful things about being in medical imaging is that you can show us really sexy images, and you should just blast them at us as much as you have time for. Also, you sort of mentioned a fair amount of computer science, technical terms, as you were describing the way that you found the path in the first section of the talk, that math generally belongs on the slides and the explanation in your mouth rather than the reverse. It's much harder to follow an explanation of some mathematical or algorithmic text without something to look at. The second part of your talk made a better impression on me than the first. There's sort of a research question there, which is in both sections you didn't necessarily you have a very you're doing a baseline comparison. You're like, the idiots today are doing this by hand, so I'm going to use deformable organisms. Why use deformable organisms rather than another image processing technique, of which there are many? This is one that maybe is related to your existing research, but explaining even a little bit of a hint of why that rather than another technique would have made that portion better. Good job.
So I agree the presentation was good. The outline and the structure you presented in the opening slide was helpful. So I thought you were very well organized, because this is a very large topic, and it's a very exciting, broad issue, but it wasn't clear where your motivation was going. You didn't focus on that, and you never got to it in my mind, except the final comment says, this is good and it's going to help a lot. You dove too deep too soon. I don't know why you went down that rat hole, I'll call it a rat hole, without seeing the big picture. And that's the basic criticism I have. There was too much technical detail for the point you're trying to make, and the point never got there. It was, there is a big picture, the topic is large, and you gave a narrow slice, and you never painted the overall picture. So that it's more structural and level of presentation that I felt needs improvement.
Being last is always hard, but couple of things they said, but I first want to say I think it was a good presentation. We're just gonna, giving constructive criticism. I think the fact you asked a question to the audience was excellent. Could have asked more, even though it's kind of hard in 10 minutes. That was good. It was good an introduction, and I agree with them. If you, two things, I think right up front, it would be nice to have, here's the problem, and a very nice picture to inspire people too. And here are the challenges, even at the beginning or later on. You did talk about them, but you talked as you went. And sometimes just making very clear, here are the challenges, we are only tackling this, which you did say, but sometimes you could make it a little bit sharper. And your pictures were good, move them up front. I guess that's it. Very good job.
Put that on somewhere. I have some trivia questions for you.
Pinch your shirt.
Well, it depends who you ask. If you look at the April Fool's RFC, the fourth medicine tactic variable is QUX. It's QUUX. I don't know. I'm thinking about doing some text analysis on the source code to answer that. But that's not my question. My question is, Fortran came out was released in what decade? Well, I'm going to defer to students first. Go ahead.
The 60s?
Wrong. Next. You got to raise your hand. Nope. You. The 50s, yes, it was. Give me half a share. For sure. All right. Yes, the 50s. So, thank you, Wikipedia. There are our judges. Okay, our next contestant is Jayashri Nagarajan. She's a second-year master's student, and she is going to talk. Her talk is titled "A Workshop on Game Development." So, give her a hand.
It's funny, the other day I was recalling something that happened to me like 6 to 8 years ago. I used to love playing video games in front of the computer, and every time I used to do that, my mother somehow got to know that, and she would come in front of me and say, "Jayashri, if you're going to play games all day, and that's exactly what you're going to do all day, all your life." And I don't know what she meant by that, but thanks, Mom, for saying that. That's such a nice blessing. And thanks to the course I did last quarter in the Design and Media Arts department at UCLA, it's a gaming workshop that I'd like to share with you, the experience that I had. It's like a workshop kind of a class, and I wanted to share some of my work that I did in that course, and in a way try to encourage people some of you who are, I'm sure, might be working on some project, you're passionate about your project, but still, kind of wavering. And I wanted to think about how, just to introduce you to get to, I don't know what to say, I'm losing words. How it is to learn through making games. Yeah, so, here's the thing. I mean, let me just start with what the game, anybody if you are interested in making games here? Oh, that's nice. It's not just about, basically the class was like a workshop-based class, which I was really impressed at. It's not just about making games. I mean, you might be even working on mobile apps or even your computer science coursework for that matter. So I just wanted to talk about how this kind of a curriculum structure really helps you get going with what you're doing. So, if you already have an idea about how you want to make a game, that's pretty well and fine. That's the best thing that can happen to you. But if you don't, you're confused, like I was, like I had no idea how to go about. I certainly knew, interested in making games, but I had no idea where to go about. So, for people like me, starting with board games is the best choice. And one of the nicest things about the course was that we were already told to make a board game. I mean, just by that fact, a lot of variabilities in deciding came down to just, were cut down. Like I already knew, since it's a board game, I have to build a board. I have to come up with a dice or a role cards, player pieces, and I don't really need to worry about all these factors. And kind of, it helped me unleash creativity beyond just these designer blocks. Okay, now what? You want to make a board game. Now you want to get to the big idea behind the game. What kind of game do you want to make? Is it supposed to be a story-based game, or is it just about rolling and flicking the ball like a bowling game for an iPad, or is it a narrative based? So what we did was adapt a storyline, pick a short story and adapt it into a board game. And that really, I was pretty impressed by that, the nature, the idea of picking a story and adapting it, because I learned how to, pick details from the story and, abstract them into game units, player pieces, game rules. And sometimes even you need to be smart enough to pick the details you want to include in the game and some details you want to ignore. So I think that's a really good experience. And then you want to think about the immersion factor here. Like, for example, the flick and roll gaming, of bowling them I was mentioning about. The main factor here is, you really want to get the flick thing right. I mean, if you fail getting that right, your game is a failure right from the beginning. But maybe in a story-based game, it's a little bit different, which I'll talk about in a minute, what I did in my game. And obviously, you can't forget who your audience is. You should know your audience. I mean, these days, games are being made even for toddlers. My 1-year kid niece plays an iPad game. So know your audience. What I did in my board game was pick a story from the Hindu mythology, Mahabharata. Like it's one of the great epics in India, and in that I picked one specific story, which was, to cut it short, it's just about the famous 5 brothers in the kingdom who were, in certain circumstances, they were sent out from their own kingdom, and they were asked to leave and live a life in a disguise out in the forest for 12 years. And in the 13th year, they get a chance to get back to the kingdom, but they have to be, cautious about the spies that are sent in the forest. And so I picked that idea. I really liked the concept that could be turned into a board game. And I tried to make it as just a simple concept, like there are 5 players playing against the board. And it's all about how they navigate through the forest and reach the kingdom. So the gameplay actually really fit well with the story here, because I wanted to get according to the story, the 5 brothers are really close to each other. So there is no reason why I should add a competitive factor here. So I thought maybe I should make it a cooperative gameplay, like players play together against the board. And if the part of the deal is that you lose if even one player loses. And in order for you to win, everybody has to win. So you have to help each other get to the kingdom as intelligently as possible. I can just go on about the game. I'd love to talk about the kind of immersion factor that I was, figuring out during the course of the project. But I'd like to keep that offline. I really wanted to get to the bigger picture here. That in this workshop-based coursework, what I really was impressed about was that we were encouraged to pick a concept right from the start and start working on it, and envision your ideas as a playable game right from the beginning, like how you want your concepts to look like when you're playing the game. And you think about every little detail, including what kind of a die you want to build, what kind of players, how many players, goals, everything else. And the main part is that every week or every now and then we were asked to get quick and really rough deliverables. So basically that means you're forced to think about how your board should look like, not just a storyline. Come up with everything ready and have your friends, your peer colleagues, the professors play the game in the very early process of your development. So that really helped I mean, it was pretty, I thought, yeah, so I'm getting to the bigger idea here, is that the class was really interactive. And, you know, in this process of getting every day, you know, getting the students play your game and have feedback, you get to fine tune it. And ultimately, when you get to when you see the final game, it's really satisfying that it's amazing where you started and where you actually have a pretty impressive game of your own. And I mean, these are some of the board work I wanted to share. Like, this is where I started barely. And this went on, and this, I mean, this is the ultimate board that I built as a final board. I mean, you can see the evolution of the board. This is just one example. So, the takeaways in the process. Yeah. So, okay, just one sentence. Yeah.
No, it's over. All right.
Okay. Sorry. I just wanted to, I mean, it's okay, but okay.
Running out of time, sorry.
Oops. Can you help me?
There we go. To the judges. We'll let you start next.
All right, judges, comments.
Okay. Don't feel bad. All of us sometimes have to go through this, and we can't finish. In our careers, this happens all the time. You gave a lot of motivation as you went, so it wasn't a bad presentation. It was pretty good. My recommendation is what I've done in the past, now I don't need anymore, is rehearse. When you rehearse, you time it, and then you don't lose. In the beginning, you wasted a lot of time thinking and talking where you're going to. It's much better if you go through faster, and at the end you have more time to kind of go back. That's the only thing. But what I like is I liked your steps. I think they were very good. But I wasn't sure whether this is something you created or the teacher gave. The steps on how you develop a game and some of these things. It wasn't clear to me. So next time, just make it a little clear whether this is stuff that you are summarizing from the workshop or you created for your methodology, whether you had a method. Now, I love when you show the boards. It would have been nicer if you could show, if you had had more time to go and say from one to the other, what were the challenges and what you learned as you went. But, and the other thing I really liked was the fact that you said you preferred it cooperative than competitive. I like that idea.
So your content was great. It was engaging. Your presentation was not an A class, with some of the reasons that were mentioned. You spoke a little softly, it was a little hard to understand you, but your passion showed through, even though it was quiet passion. And your engagement, that was really excellent. I loved your opening remark about the motivation for you. And you had a good focus on the ideas and the lessons you learned. That was a different approach. It was an experiential description you gave. And you did what your title offered. You described a game workshop environment. As was said, don't worry about not finishing on time. You'll get that down. I think the structure of the presentation does need work. You get that with experience and a little more preparation, but it was very good.
So at the opening, one's heart went out to you. I mean, it's very hard to know what somebody else is experiencing, but it certainly looked like you had a moment of extreme nervousness at the beginning. Some of the things that make that clear to an audience are that you were grabbing your middle, like you were trying to hold yourself in. And it was a real relief to me as a judge to watch you relax and actually pull out of that initial nervousness. So, assuming that that's what happened. So, to that extent, you should be very proud that you got through that. It can be very hard, and sometimes people just stop. I want to point out some problems that are sort of indicated in your presentation, just in the slides. You have 4 slides that are called the big idea that contain a large number of different ideas. And then in words, you said, now I want to get to the bigger idea. Okay, so that's a structural problem that actually has to do with the way that you're thinking about the text that you gave. I would also say that you, maybe when you felt nervous, you went back upon your own experience. So you talked about, I'll tell you what I did in this class. That's a very good scientific, engineering-oriented instinct, and I applaud it. But make sure that in your slides, you draw the larger conclusion so that you can illustrate the larger conclusion, which is there written down for you, so you don't have to think of it on the fly with your own experience. Overall, I think this is quite a good presentation, and I think you are working against some things and you worked very well.
Thanks again.
All right, so hook that into your
Our next
pocket.
speaker, While Keith sets up the mic, I think you guys probably more hands on this one. What is the
There we go.
average complexity of bubble sort? Yeah. All right. If we're ready, do an extra
Yeah.
Our next contestant is Ravi Srinivas Ranganathan. He's a first-year master's student, and his talk is titled A Look into Viral Videos.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. And yeah, to talk about myself, there's nothing much. I'm just like a first-year master's student. And yeah, so my topic is like born out of wasting endless hours on the internet and like looking at videos, wasting time, just which I'm pretty sure like most of us are guilty over here. And yeah, and if you're thinking about this part of it, I mean, I did not choose the topic just because it anagrams to something, which is cool. And frankly, my advisor is a really awesome person, and I have nothing against him to like post this. So what am I going to talk about? My talk is going to be about viral ideas. I mean, it started off as a very grand plan, like any student project. I wanted to like mine information out of like anything which is viral, all kind of ideas which are viral. But then I realized I'm definitely not that gifted enough. So yeah, I thought I'd like delve down into like working with videos, because videos are viral, and just about every one of us has like seen videos and like felt captivated by a lot of them. And I'm pretty sure, as in everybody finds it interesting. So that's like the bottom line. And this is basically what I'm going to be talking about. So what exactly are viral ideas? Now, this is lolcats for those of you who don't know, and I'm pretty sure every one of you would know that. But then, has anybody thought about who started the lolcat phenomena? Has anybody thought about like why was it like so very infective that other people wanted to like work on it? Other people wanted to like add images of their own cats, add like little ideas on them, and spice it up so that everybody has like a nice lull time. So yeah, so what exactly causes things to go viral is something which is like gold. I mean, if you can predict things as like potentially viral or not, you can make a lot of money. And I kind of want a piece of that, so that's why I kind of like got thinking on this. And this quote from Wikipedia really inspired me a lot, because I realized that there are a lot of these influences on me, which is like it's kind of like ubiquitous, and I never really think about them. I mean, like, what is hip, what is the fashion, what's rad? That's something which every one of us like sees and kind of like absorbs to a little extent, sometimes consciously, but then a lot of time very, very subconsciously. And if you look at viral phenomena, they've been there for like quite a lot of time. I mean, it's not just like ever since the birth of internet, it's been there ever since like humanity and like social life started. And there's quite a bit of stuff which has been like viral. And I mean, right now it's kind of like become more like internet focused, because everybody's addicted to it. Nobody can get off it right now. And yeah, as I mentioned, my goal is to kind of like mine information out of it, see how it can be made useful. Right now there's like a lot of statistical analysis, and there are a lot of people who say, I'm a marketing expert, I know how exactly I can like leverage social media and just about anything else to like make your business successful. But then, are they actually doing it? I don't think so, because they're not actually applying like some kind of intelligence. What they're doing is kind of like a very top level approach, and my idea is to generate more ideas. So I basically like present a lot of ways that we can probably apply existing techniques that we can apply and make into something really good. How many of you have seen the movie Inception? I mean, this particular line is something which every one of us remembers. Even if you've just seen the trailer, you'd know this line instantly, and it sticks to you. So if you look at it, I mean, if you think about it, it's actually been carefully engineered to make sure that you remember this line and that you think about it. So what exactly is the motivation of doing something like this? The main motivation is all of this. It's like advertising, which everybody seems to talk about, movies, music. So if you can predict if a movie is like good material, will it catch on? Will people be interested about it? That's a lot of money right over there, and TV series, obviously. And yeah, now the thing is, these things are huge risk and huge return. But then can you also like engineer other digicam shot videos, like little videos like what Rebecca Black made right now, which kind of like got her a lot of attention, though not for the right reasons. I completely would like to clear that I had no enjoyment in watching that video, but then still I ended up watching that. So that's kind of like what you should be thinking about. So yeah, I mean, I thought I'd start off by like showing you some of the things that every one of us is like very highly likely to have seen. And this one hits right home. I mean, this is something which happened right over here. So what was the reason that it became viral? I mean, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of nasty videos out there, but then there has to be a reason as to why this went viral and not a million other ones which are like very similar to it. So what was that little thing which kind of like made it go viral? I'm not going to answer that question, but then I'm going to tell you what ways you can think to answer that question for yourself. So yeah, so here's my tall scheme, which is to like, how exactly can you like apply existing techniques to build something that will predict if something can go viral or not? And determining statistical models. Seriously, this is just there for like legacy purposes. I did not even verify this information about whether it's true or not. But then the thing is, before you get into something, the first thing that you need to do is like to get a depth of things. So to figure out what exactly is like the math behind it, how exactly the numbers work out, that kind of like gives you a very top level idea about like how exactly the system works. But then this is not something that I am interested in. What I'm interested in is like aspects like this. So can you use like existing computer science techniques? Like for example, if you were to generate tags about the videos, can you use those tags and can you mine them to get information about how popular they are likely to become? So that's the kind of thing I was thinking about. And if you look at it, I started thinking about this problem kind of at the very beginning of this topic. And how exactly would you like decompose the problem? The first would be to like probably build the tags, and in case it's like an informative video or something, you can always like use some kind of like voice to text transcription, and then use information extraction, existing data mining techniques, and get a lot of tags. And once you have those tags, you can mine them. And the other one is basically like human entry. So if a person watches that video, he has like, or if a person shares that video, he has a high chance of like tagging it himself, such as like the uploaders on YouTube who write like tags about what exactly their video is so that it shows up on search. So that is kind of like good quality information about videos. And the content, and then the genre, the topic, and then other contextual information about like what time the video was released and anything else which is like very pertinent to the topic are all like information that you can like mine. And some of the striking aspects that you can mine are like associations and correlations. Like, for example, if you were to look at the Streisand effect, it plays out very beautifully from a data mining perspective, but then it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd assume that if something is banned, people would not want to look at it, but then people always end up looking at it. It's kind of like, it's like our psychology which works against it. And yeah, if you look at it from a data mining perspective, it kind of like would show up instantly when you do an association or a correlation. Like for example, it's very, very likely that those kind of like videos have tags such as like banned, not safe for work, or controversial, and it's actually practically true. Everybody who says not safe for work has to watch it when he's at work. I've done it myself like 4 or 5 times. So that's kind of like how things work out. And if it's kind of like not possible for us to like get a lot of these insights by just looking at it. And I'm not claiming that I got any insight right now. But then what I'm saying is that it is possible to get more insights like this. So what else can I do? So I thought I should like add something new. I didn't want to like just say everything which was there in existing in practice. And I thought, why not look at the comments that are there in videos? Like if you look at all the highly rated videos, the popular videos, you find that they have a lot of comments. And a lot of times you find that those comments are completely useless. So That's a really big problem with them. But then, yeah, and there's a lot of spam. So if you can like get rid of those two things, first thing to remove the spam, and second thing to like see which ones are the ones which are actually of value, which comments have like some kind of content which you can use to understand the video and like the semantic of the video. Those ones, if you can like understand that kind of information, it's really awesome. And yeah, and you can use that to like generate tags. And the advantage of this kind of an approach is that it has, I mean, it's fully public. Anybody can look at the comments. So all you have to do is just like use some kind of system which retrieves them and kind of like mines them for information. And the next one is like the audio portion of the video. I mean, I'm kind of like I have no idea about audio and like how exactly music works. But then I kind of like understand how you can like, how it can actually be done. And if any of you have used Pandora, you'd know how awesome its music recommendation engine is. Because the thing is, I was pretty skeptical about how an automated system can like kind of understand my music tastes, but then it actually does a very good job. And the idea behind what they do is like this music genome project, where they decompose every music into a set of basically just vectors and like attributes. And they basically play around with that and try to like come up with how much of an appeal it'll have to you. So can we do something like this, which kind of like focuses not just towards one person, but then towards like the broad majority of people? That's a really good problem right over there. And the difficulty would be to like develop the fitness function for that. And then there's always Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. The media has like a huge influence. I mean, where exactly things start, if you look at it, it's a very, very interesting phenomena. Like if any of you have seen 4chan, you shouldn't. Yeah, you'd probably like see how it is like the originator of a lot of things. Twitter and... That's time. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Just 1 second. And before I go, I'd just like to finish on this note. Today is Thursday, day after is Saturday, and tomorrow it's Friday.
Beautiful. Awesome. So I'll let you start now.
Okay. So, you wasted a lot of time in the beginning getting going. Time you needed at the end, clearly you didn't have. And I wrote down the beginning was disorganized as to where you were going. Then I wrote down, so was the middle. And we never got to the end. So the structure was faulty. There was far too much text on your slides. You never got to it. It was distracting, and you should know that the audience will spend their attention reading the text and not listening to you. So what you say won't matter. That's a really fundamental truth. Keep a lot of text off, maybe a few bullet points, 1 or 2 words, maybe 3. The slides where you had no text were best. The graphics were good in general. They attracted, we can watch that and listen to you at the same time. Now, you posed a very, very enticing question. Why do certain videos go viral? And then the next thing you said is, but I'm not going to touch that. So you teased us with a really important direction, and then you left us. And you went on to your main idea, which is mining tags. Where was the big idea? Well, putting in things like, not safe for work was an interesting idea. Looking at the comments was an interesting idea. And I think you were heading in a direction where you were beginning to mine some valuable information, and then it ran out. So you've got to organize. Clearly, you were not preparing that. I don't know if you ran this with a watch, ever. And if you did, you shouldn't have been where you ended up. And if you didn't, you should have. So.
I agree with a lot of Len's comments, but I think there's a lot of positive things to say. I mean, your energy level was excellent, and listening to you was in fact a lot of fun. I found it, I didn't spend a lot of time looking at you, but listening to you was very easy given the interesting things that you were saying. I think the main problem is that you have a high level idea and you don't actually have yet a research idea, which is very, very common. So what you tried to do was to fill out that high-level idea, which is kind of a cool goal, with just a tremendous amount of stuff. So the next challenge for you, substantively, is going to be to learn how to drill down on a little tiny piece of the problem, just something that you can do, and then keep the high-level story. Like, and this is something that all of us in research are constantly challenged with. I could tell you what I do is I save the internet, and I know in my heart of hearts that that's a lie. But what I did is something much more fine-grained. But like whenever I give a talk, I have to start out with, I'm going to save the internet, or, I'm going to save human brains by, narrow. So narrow it down, relax, and don't try and fill stuff up with stuff. But I think you have a good future ahead of you giving talks.
Okay, we're going to have a little controversy here. Again, it probably is because I'm also in industry, and you should see the charts that people present, or the government. They are so busy. I actually really enjoyed the presentation. I agree that, it could have been planned. In fact, one idea would be you had a bunch of, you had steps or whatever it was. You could have presented that up front so that it's like the outline of what you're going to talk about. Len, again, it's the personalities. Len found that there were too many words and distracting. I actually didn't think so. I listened to you, and that was one of the qualities that you didn't read up on them. You just kind of gave it a highlight. Now, and I like that. I think that was good. I got very interested. In fact, I'm going to go out of here thinking about ideas because it's something he inspired me. So that's part of the presentation. Again, the timing was bad, and there were some with very small print people can't read. Some of the cartoons seemed good, but couldn't read it. And I just thought a lot of the times in terms of the presentation, you were looking too much at the charts. And you were not talking or reading, but you're talking about it, so face the audience a little bit more. But I enjoyed the presentation. Thanks.
Say one more thing. Just one quick other point. You do have a little bit of an audience issue. You're talking to at least two audiences here. You're talking to faculty members who are judges, and you're talking to your fellow students. Your faculty members who are judges don't know what you're talking about when you're talking about this video up there or that video over there. Our audience of what we know about viral videos is going to be somewhat smaller than perhaps yours, apparently. So you need to be aware of that and not assume things of your audience that your audience can't deliver. There were a number of times when I lost the thread.
Put that in your pocket.
Next trivia question.
There we go.
So, vinyl records spin at a constant rate, but CDs don't spin at a constant rate. Why? Anybody? Well, nobody's answering. Oh, wait, listen.
He's already got it away. Yeah.
Right. So another way of putting it is that in every track that the laser reads, the bit should be the same rate, right? But if the CD spun the same speed, by the time you got on the outside, the rate would be much higher than on the inside, which is why the inner tracks on LPs. Next up, we have Sahil Shah, and he's a first-year PhD student, and his talk is titled Techno-Insula-Phobia. Thank you.
So, hi everybody, I'm Sahil, and this is actually something which I just thought of a couple of days back. I couldn't help noticing, but as Ravi mentioned, he said that you cannot run away from technology and you are surrounded by it. This presentation mainly focuses on that technology and describes that while of course technology is the way that is really great and it can be really helpful for us. It provides us all the comforts and all the facilities. It's a sign that how humans have progressed in the 21st century. But some people, they abuse technology. Like, they are so addicted to technology, it's like more of a smoking addiction. And this actually has, there have been many cases about it. So I thought it would be good to discuss this topic. So there we go, techno-insula-phobia. First of all, let's start with some interesting facts, actually. These facts show how much technology is penetrated in the audience, especially in the youth. One of the most interesting facts that I observed was that Google handles almost 3 billion searches per day, which amounts to 88 billion per year. Another the social networking example that 52 million tweets are handled per day by Twitter. And the amount of TV that a person is watching in his or her life by the time he or she turns 65 is about 9 to 10 years, which is huge. And YouTube, which is everywhere, has 490 million unique users, and the amount of video that these users watch now is resulting to 2.9 billion hours watched in a month, which is resulting as 325,000 years, which is enormous. So now we come to the question, what is this techno-insulaphobia? Well, it's just what it says. Techno means technology, insula means when you're isolated from technology, and phobia is the addiction, when you just cannot help yourself but stick on to technology. So many of us must have experienced some of these cases, like some people become so flustered when they lose their GPS that they cannot think straight. Some people are so addicted to emails, Facebook, and Twitter that they feel restless and their arms start twitching when they are not available. When the internet access is down, people start complaining. And some people even tantamount luxury as possessing the best computers and best technology that they have. And some people consider it an offense if someone asks directions on their way when they're listening to their favorite music on iPod. So there have been rising cases of neck, wrist, shoulder injuries, and back pains. And there have been observations by the doctoral committee that the response rates of humans have progressively are decreasing. Like, people take more time to think nowadays than they used to before. This is an observation. And so look at the current scenario. The number of, for example, BlackBerry. 84% of the BlackBerry people are having compulsive BlackBerry syndrome, in which they have to look at a BlackBerry every now and then and check maybe 30 to 40 times an hour. This one is more interesting, which is 96% of the teens and students are hooked on to Facebook, Twitter, and some sort of social networking services. And about 350 million people are suffering from Facebook addiction disorder, which is actually a legitimate and a valid syndrome now. It's considered to be a valid syndrome by psychiatrists. Now we come to the main point, stress due to technology overload. While stress is actually a good thing, it's a natural phenomenon of the body to prepare the body for complicated environmental problems. What happens in stress is that it's a body's natural reaction. The glands, the adrenaline glands, they release hormones into the brain, into the bloodstream. These hormones reach the brain, and that prepares the brain to deal with the complicated situations, to perform faster, and to process information faster and act faster, basically. So stress is not bad, but technology can also cause stress, which I'm trying to emphasize here. Like, if you stay focused on your monitor, your iPhone, if you're playing video games every now and then, that means your eyes are hooked into the screen for more than 12 to 14 hours a day. There is nothing but stress. And that stress, when it is kept, when the brain is in that state of stress for a long time, it causes a lot of internal imbalance to the brain, which I'll discuss it. And there have been observations that the IQ levels of some people, especially children and the teenagers, has been decreasing if they play a lot of teenage computer games. Obviously, one of the main examples that people's mathematical skills decrease, especially in children. They sometimes have trouble in computing mathematical calculations like multiplication, division, which are actually pretty simple. They find it difficulty in memorizing. A lot of people have dyslexia because of that. And the main reason to all these things is that when you have stress and when we overload our brain with technological stress, there's an enzyme, kinase C, which is released in the brain. So this is the brain, and this region is the cortex of the brain. This region is the brain stem, and this region is the cerebellum. Now, the cortex of the brain is responsible for seeing and processing the information. So all the sensory signals are received by this cortex, and the midbrain and the brainstem is responsible for reflex actions, which translate the signals and direct the organs to take actions. The cerebellum is essential for fine motor skills in muscles. So basically, the brainstem and the cerebellum direct the body to take up an action after processing the information that it gets from this brain cortex. So when we have stress, mainly for a long time, what happens is the enzyme protein kinase C that affects the neurons in the cortex of the brain. There are bridges between the cortex and the midbrain, and the cortex and the cerebellum. When we have stress, that enzyme can stay for a long time in the brain. It causes the conductivity, it affects the conductivity of the neurons, and this conductivity can cause slowing of the impulses, and the transmission rate decreases significantly. It affects the cytoskeleton of the neurons as a whole, and because of cytoskeleton, the ability to transmit information is really hindered. And that is the reason that if kids start playing games, or if kids start being addicted to games from an early age, their brain does suffer some significant damage. This degeneration, especially of the gray matter, is responsible in memory degeneration, because most of the memory is stored in the gray matter, and if these enzymes stay persistent in the brain, they can destroy the cells, which can cause memory impairment as well. So some researchers at Yale and Cornell have analyzed this phenomenon. What they experimented is that they tried their hypothesis on a group of students, medical students to be perfect. And medical students have a lot of stress during their exams. They have a lot of technological stress as well, because being students, they have to continuously deal with the technology. After their exams, they realize that the amount of damage that has caused to their brain takes almost 30 days to heal. So if the brain is not given due rest after working for a long time, that damage cannot be recovered easily. Besides, this damage is not restricted to the brain. Repetitive stress syndromes can also cause damages to the carpal tunnel, the wrist, the tendonitis, the inflammation of wrist and shoulder, and epicondylitis, which is commonly known as tennis elbow. So in the future, most of the persons currently suffering are from the age group of 20 to 40. So we don't know how the condition of the person will be when they would reach 50 to 60. It is hypothesized that by the time they reach 50 to 60, they might suffer from early senility and vegetative state. So what we can do about this is that we can give the brain some time to rest, recover, and we should not rely on apps entirely. We should memorize stuff. We should be in control of the usage of the technology, how much we use, how much time we're spending in the monitor, looking at the monitor, playing video games, browsing internet, libraries, etc. We can set a not to do list, like not opening social networking websites before like 12 p.m. or 6 p.m. And we can educate kids about this and restrict their activities on the PlayStation and PC. Some new trends are established, like casual Fridays. We have no email Fridays, in which no person is allowed to send emails on Fridays. And there's a BlackBerry check-in program, which allows guests to check in their BlackBerries at hotels. So.
Thank you.
Judges.
I'll let you start this time.
Yeah. Hi. I had some fun here. Right. I think you tried to talk more of a light subject, which actually is not so light. But you had a lot of good data. I found the slides a bit too verbose. You could have summarized, just put the topics and then talk to them. You tend to talk about all the negatives. I think there are positives, a lot of positives in that too. So I would recommend on this presentation. But I wasn't sure also where you're going. It would be nice right up front to say, this is what I'm going to do, or, you know, you had a lot of good data on the issues or the facts and everything, but I would like to have known where you're going in the beginning. And otherwise, it was kind of interesting.
So I have a question. How much computer time did you spend preparing this presentation? And what was the price? At any rate, I liked your style, cool presentation style. It was very engaging, and it got attention, certainly. Your opening point was very clear, and I made the note you could have presented it more quickly. One example would have done it, then I realized that was your whole talk. So that was okay, but I didn't know that's where you were going to take us. I thought you were going to say, you know, too much is bad, now here are some solutions. No, that's okay. No, but no, I'm just pointing out what I, as an audience member, perceived and where you took my head. Great graphics. The stress discussion was very good. You went deep. You went really deep. And then I wondered, was that your point? Also to tell us about the psychochemical effects on one's brain, which was sort of a second point. You illustrated well with that Yale study and Cornell study. You started to give a solution, the casual Friday and such like, which is a good general idea. Present the problem, describe it, and then offer a solution. But we didn't quite get there. But again, let me repeat, I liked your style. It was humorous and informative and tongue-in-cheek. But you could have given us a little better idea initially where you were going and why you were going there.
To start on the general side, I think this reflects what these guys have said as well. I think you switched genres twice in your talk, which is probably 2 times too many to switch genres. So at the beginning, the genre that you had was that of, I would say, a sort of a garbage statistics talk. I didn't actually, I mean, this is a substance comment, but like Facebook addiction disorder, 350 million people, I mean, whatever, fine. But you start off with sort of bad statistics, then you switch to a medical talk where you were describing things at a level of depth that very few people who are interested in the first part of the talk could follow you in the middle of the talk. And then you ended, I mean, the effective ending of your talk was with a sort of a like, here are some hints to help you get through the day, which is a different person again. So I think this is another audience comment. Think about your audience. Think about where your audience wants to start, where they want to end, and what they can absorb. Because I don't think there are very many people who would react well to all 3 of those parts. You almost lost me at the very beginning by saying the following as your first sentence. This is something I just thought of a couple days back. No, don't start that way. Start with something strong and stay strong throughout the rest. To be concrete, when you have a lot of facts on your slide, it's a very valuable thing to do to have a lot of facts on your slide. Do not go over every fact one at a time. Not only did that take up more time than you had, it also isn't using your audience's brains effectively. Pick the ones that you want to talk about and leave the rest of them on the slide for backup, and you'll do well. I would also say that towards the end of the talk, your slides started collecting lots and lots of typos. And your job, as there were sort of like places where there were multiple spaces instead of one, there were dropped out words that I knew you had done and not the person you were quoting. This is the sort of thing that can lose an audience member, as it did partially lose me. So make sure that you double check everything that you have on the slide. Less is more as long as it's correct.
Thank you.
I think I'll skip the trivia question for now.
Hold
Next
this.
presentation is Paul Ways. He is a third-year PhD student, and his talk is titled "Learning to Build a Better Workforce." Take it away.
Thank you. This is joint work with a bunch of my colleagues from Yelp, and I'd also like to thank Professor Jen Wortman-Vaughan for some initial comments, initial version of this work. So how many of you have been to Diddy Reese? Pretty much everybody? Cool. How many of you haven't? So. Yeah, okay, sorry for you. You should check it out. So if you haven't been from the area, you might check out an online local business directory like Yelp to see what are the cool places to check out when you visit UCLA. So millions of users come to this website every month just to read reviews, see what's the good, what are good places to check out near where you live, or where you're visiting, where you're traveling. But Yelp also functions as an authoritative business directory. And so Yelp is a great place to check out for phone numbers, for hours of operation. That information might not be on a business website, even if the business has a website. Many businesses don't. So this information is all user contributed. And so usually users contribute accurate information. Sometimes they don't. So sometimes they might give us inappropriate categories. For instance, we've had people look at a seafood restaurant and suggest categories aquariums or water parks. So here you might see, Diddy Reese is not a strip club. So, so Yelp gets millions of these business listing changes every year. And so we need a solution for this problem. We need to be able to process in an efficient and cost-effective manner. How can we validate each and every one of these changes? Because we definitely want to be correct when these users come in and check out this information. So, pardon me, that was the wrong button. So we turned to Amazon Mechanical Turk. And so how many of you maybe heard of Mechanical Turk? Okay, so for those of you who don't, it's essentially an online workplace for small tasks. So anybody can go to Amazon, sign up, register a bank account with Amazon, and do simple tasks online, such as tasks like this. So given the Diddy Reese, the phone number, the web address, could you please verify for us which is the correct address, the one in Los Angeles or the one in San Francisco? And we'll give you 5 cents for answering. And so workers get sort of this base pay, even if they don't answer correctly, and so it's important. I mean, if they do a bad job over and over again, they might get expelled from the system. But they basically get this base pay. And so Yelp does have in-house experts validating some of these changes. We have a small set of tasks where we know the correct answer, but clearly we can't have these experts processing all these millions of changes. We'd have too many experts. So the first part of this talk, I just want to give a quick overview of wisdom from our experiences. So this is sort of one of the largest systems that's been of its kind that's been published. So here are the sort of tasks that users are seeing. So we give them the business, we give them the address, the web address, everything we know except the unknown, the categories say. So maybe we ask workers to categorize this business, or maybe the users suggest a category, we ask them to accept or reject these changes. So how many of you would be comfortable doing like 1,000 of these tasks, maybe a day or so? How many of you would be comfortable writing a script to maybe guess the answer and do 1,000? Yeah. So this is what happens mostly. So if we take our expert validated changes, feed those to workers, and see how they do, we're able to sort of grade them, see how accurate they are. So these are some histograms of accuracies based upon 5 different listing changes that we had workers process. And so with respect to the category task, the top 10% of workers are doing pretty decently. They're doing about 80% accurate. But if you look at the URL validation task, which is literally, is this the official website for the business or not, it's about 50% accuracy. So clearly we have some people spamming those tasks, or people just cruising through tasks, just clicking the first thing they see. And so what can we do to improve the work accuracy here? I mean, we can definitely work on the task design, and so there's been some related work in that. Also, the balance of the difficulty of the task, the pay that workers receive is very important. There's some interesting work there. We can definitely iterate that, but we're still going to have this problem where there are a bunch of workers who are spammers and workers who they do okay, but their accuracy is maybe about the 80% range. But we really want high accuracy, though. So how can we design a mechanism to essentially either compensate for these erroneous workers or sort of maybe prune their labels out over time? So looking at previous work on this problem, Dowd and Skeen have a very influential method. And so essentially what they present is an algorithm that takes the labels from workers for tasks, and then also the constraint that you have multiple workers working on each of these tasks, and then outputting essentially an estimation of what is the correct label for each task. And so this is the setting where essentially we don't know the correct labels. So some of you might say, oh, you have multiple workers working on the same task. Why don't you just use majority vote? The problem is that if you just use a majority voting, then you'll be counting the votes of the erroneous workers just as much as, say, like the good workers. So you want to say maybe to try to weight the contribution of the different workers. So because some workers will be biased. So the hypothesis behind this method is that each worker has sort of this latent confusion matrix. Like they have some latent bias. You show a worker a task, they're going to label all the businesses like nightclubs, for instance, instead of restaurants. And so what this algorithm does is essentially try to estimate this confusion matrix of the worker, as well as probability distribution over the labels for a task, and then spit those out as a result. And so essentially, it's a fairly straightforward application of expectation maximization. If you're not familiar with the method, essentially the algorithm will create plausible sort of estimates of these two parameters and then iterate until there's some convergence, until the difference between the estimates over time falls below some threshold set by the user. So there are many different extensions of this technique, taking into account if you have some labeled data, some expert labeled data. If you know something about the workers, you can incorporate reputation of the workers. Essentially, the results of the literature in this field show that they're very effective, but you need about like 10 to 15 workers per task in order to achieve about 90% accuracy or so. And so this is great, and also you can apply these methods, but they're post-processing methods. You have to have the workers work on all the tasks first, and then apply them. Unfortunately, with the amount of changes we need to process, we can't do that. We need to process these changes online. In fact, to make things financially feasible, we actually can only assign maybe about like 3 workers per task instead of 10 or 15. So what we present is sort of a first cut at a method to essentially an online mechanism for weeding out the more erroneous workers. So we start actually with sort of just a general competency test. And this actually cuts out a lot of spammers. So spammers will come and say, oh, I have to take this test before even working on your tasks. I'm just going to go do something else. And so this competency test cuts out about like 75% of the workers or so. And then essentially we leverage the expert labeled task in order to work on sort of these test tasks where we know the correct answer, and we're able to then gauge the accuracy of the workers over some time. Unfortunately, some workers sort of give up. They do maybe 10 tasks. We had one worker do like 900 of these tasks or so. Some of them lose interest after a while. But essentially, we were able to we grade workers. If they get about 70% accuracy in the category task, we'll go say, oh, we'll graduate you to real tasks. Unfortunately, through all this processing, our workforce isn't big enough. For about 4,000 workers, we cut down to about 80 workers, which unfortunately is not enough for the sort of the volume that we need to process. So future work is to improve this mechanism. Maybe we can incorporate some of the more erroneous workers somehow. If they're good on one task but not the other, maybe we can still approve them for certain tasks. But we still have this volume of changes we need to process. So what else can we do here? So Yelp is an online review site. It got millions of reviews. New business pops up on Yelp. People write reviews, and suppose you need to categorize that business. We can infer the category from the review text. So we actually applied sort of a very straightforward naive Bayes classifier here, where the prior is essentially the frequency of the category, and the likelihood would be essentially just word frequency. So if your reviews are mentioning, for instance, chicken tikka masala with very high frequency, it's going to probably imply the Indian food category. So we had a couple of adaptations, but pretty straightforward application of this technique. It's been effective for also for email spam filtering and stuff like that. So who think won the naive Bayes classifier or the workers? Naive Bayes classifier? Workers? Nobody knows? So as MIT Technology Review said, the AI defeats the hive mind. So, so the naive Bayes classifier outperformed the workers pretty well on most of these categories. And as you can see from these ROC curves, which would ideally, they measure essentially the power of the classifier to discriminate between different categories. Ideally, they'd be L-shaped. There's still a lot of room for improvement too. So it does a pretty good job. So in conclusion, there are a couple, very interesting open questions left by this work. How can we improve on this mechanism to process worker changes online? And then also, how can we design task mechanisms that can encourage quality work? These are very important questions. There's millions of dollars being put into crowdsourcing right now in both industry and research. So definitely recommend you guys check out these problems, and thank you for your time.
Judges.
Thanks a lot. So there's almost a category difference between this talk and the other talks. This is a polished research talk that was well delivered, on time, so excellent. I can only commend you for this. One issue that it might have is an issue that a lot of research talks tend to have, which is that it's not clear what you wanted from us. You were telling us about something that you had done. You had already decided what the next thing that you were going to do was. It's not clear what you wanted us to learn, and it's not clear what you wanted, what feedback you wanted from us. So that is something, even though you gave a very polished presentation with well laid out slides, it's something that sort of divorces the audience from you, because we can tell that you actually don't want to communicate something specific. Other than this, excellently done.
Yes, it was a polished presentation. You spoke a little too fast. I had trouble understanding a lot of what you were saying, but there was enough redundancies I could pick it up. But the title of your talk that we were presented in this brochure, it wasn't clear that you were talking to that title until you finally made it clear. But you shouldn't hide that from the audience. You should upfront tell us what is you going to be doing. I mean, it's a technique that some people use, and you chose to use it, but I think it's not a good idea. You should not surprise us into what you're going to be doing. But you finally got to a clear problem. You were gesturing too much and moving around too much. It was a little bit distracting, but some of it is important to show the enthusiasm you have. Frankly, there was too much math on the slides. You didn't explain what the math was. You mumbled about it. Many of us understand what the math is, but it seemed to be, it wasn't effectively used. You could have said in words, as you did, what, the idea of a hypothesis, a test, a Bayes test, etc. The description of filtering down from over 4,000 to 79 candidates was excellent. There was a clear lesson there, and it led you to the problem of not enough people. You showed some curves on the bottom of one slide. I was trying to figure out what they meant. I figure up to the right is good, but you had really tiny text describing what the key axis was, and I finally was able to read it, but that could have been done better. But it's an important problem. I think it has legs. I think you did a good job, and there's plenty more to do, so basically I enjoyed it.
I guess I don't have any more to say. They said it all. Good presentation. I actually like the gesturing, maybe because I gesture a lot, keeps me interested. But agree the math was a bit too much and not enough explanation there and where you're going. Those are my key points.
Sorry, this is maybe against genre, but I think in particular the one slide that had way too much math was the David and Skeen slide, which wasn't even your work. That was the longest slide, it was the most boring slide, you got lost, and the most important thing about it, namely that it wasn't applicable to your problem because of post-processing, you waited for about 2 minutes to say. Other than this, math fine.
All right, thank you. And finally, we've got our last presenter. This is David Jurgens. He's a sixth-year PhD student, and the title of his talk is, and before I tell you, I just want to tell you what to do after he talks. You've got programs, you have a pen. Again, write down your votes, first, second, third, on the back here. I will be sitting over there with my magical tabulating machine. Someone will collect them from you. Someone is going to read them to me, and we can basically score it as quickly as you guys can hand them to us. So as soon as that's
bring
done,
them down to the
bring them
we're
down
not
to the
going to
front.
come and get them from
We will score it, and then we'll announce the winners right away. So stick around. I'm sorry? Is anybody missing? Yeah, does anyone need one? If not, if they do, there should be some back. Okay, back to the ranch. David Jurgens, sixth-year PhD student. The title of his talk is Predicting Science with Science.
So a little redundant talk. Is this too loud? Little loud? All right. So I wanted the theme of the talks was science. So I wanted to go big picture here. And I want to start with the question. This is, I think, an important fundamental question that every researcher asks themselves is, how is my research going to impact the rest of science? And I'm not talking maybe just artificial intelligence or other fields, but chemistry, physics, even the frozen northlands of North Campus where the humanity people dwell. Can we actually make a difference in all of these groups? And so using this, I want to ask this fundamental question. of where do we go from here in terms of measuring impact. So to do this, I want to start with a historical analysis, just a brief historical look at the computer itself to see what has impacted what we have as modern day computers. So starting out, Joseph Marie Jacquard decided that every time he wanted to make a new sweater pattern, it wasn't good enough to build a new loom. So instead, he made a programmable loom. So these things right here, you switch it in, you get a new sweater pattern. Much easier to build new sweaters. A while later, in 1835, Charles Babbage is trying to build a general purpose version of this. And he realizes that there was a smart person a few decades ago that wanted to build really nice sweaters. And using this idea, he builds the difference engine, which was one of the first analytical machines that could actually calculate things. He actually didn't build it, but he came up with the idea around then. So much later, in the 1880s, as they're trying to build these programmable machines, Herman Hollerith is riding on a train one day, and he's trying to figure out how to store the data in the machine. And he sees this conductor walk by, and he makes little notes on a person's train card about what they look like so they can't swap off the train card to someone else. As it turns out, that kind of sparks the idea that maybe if we have these cards somewhere, we can actually store the information for programs and data on them. So sort of all sorts of things are trickling down here. A little later, everyone's favorite computer scientist, Alan Turing, thinks back to Charles Babbage as he's working on the halting problem, a famous mathematical problem. And he realizes that he can come up with a different idea, the Turing machine, in this case a steam-powered Turing machine. And he's going to use Charles Babbage's idea. So we're starting to see this hierarchy, this trickle-down effect of things in the 1800s percolating up to the 1930s. Around the same time, Claude Shannon is working on this analog, actual analog, not even digital computer, and realizes in one of his amazing master theses that electromagnetic relays and Boolean gates can form the basis for electrical computing. So it's kind of contemporary. John von Neumann, again, everyone's favorite computer scientist, talks to him and says, hey, I know a great way to make computers in terms of architecture, and comes up with what we call the von Neumann architecture. And then last, John Mauchly and J. Presper Eckert, talking with these guys, actually contemporaries, kind of interesting how they're all related, come up with some of the first two Turing-complete big computers that can solve real problems. So where does this get us? We have this big hierarchy of science. We have everything coming from electrical engineering and mathematics to lesser-known sciences like train conductor science and loom science. And it's all percolating down until what we have is the best source of computer today, the iPod Nano. So it all comes together. So what's the big point of this? The idea is that we have these ideas from far-flung reaches of science, and they're all coming together at some level. And what we want to say is, how do we measure the impact of that? How do we know that if I'm working somewhere in loom science, I'm building sweaters, how would I even anticipate that my idea would come and make the iPod Nano, which is fantastic. And so what I want to propose is that we view science as a network, an interconnected network of ideas. So we have artificial intelligence right here, and it's connected to library science, connected to operation research, networking, telecommunications. As people develop ideas and research and different technologies in one area, as they get more important, they spread out. They come into new areas, and it really impacts the research of other people. So now we have a second question. We have a more refining research question. So if science is a network, how can we measure impact using that network? So again, we're trying to ask, how can we measure our own impact? So it's a little hypothesis for analyzing this is going to be that we can identify the information flow. We can identify how an idea gets connected by looking at the citations. So as one area cites another area, we can see that idea is becoming more important. So in this case, it's an actual citation network. We see that medicine and molecular cell biology are actually citing each other fairly regularly. You can see there's a fairly healthy information flow between the two topics, whereas ecology and evolution is primarily drawing from molecular and cell biology to make its own conclusions. And then you can see it's interesting, there's physics up here and medicine up here, and there's a clear path going through chemistry, molecular and cell biology, all the way to medicine. So we can see this kind of trickle-down effect that is that researchers invent one thing, other areas pick it up, and then other areas may build upon it until we sort of have this giant web of science going through. So as a first analysis, I want to suggest that we take a look at measurements in two ways. So the first is we can build citation or graphs between citations and see how often do other authors cite each other. And using this sort of cluster, we can say, okay, who are both the big authors in on my topic, and what are they doing? So in our case, we can look at this document retrieval cluster. So we've taken a bunch of authors, in this case, actually Chao Mei Chen, took a bunch of authors, and she clustered them together, and she took what's the topics that they work on. And we see that Gregory Salton, who was one of the very first information retrieval, huge guy, and this automatically pops up from our citation analysis. So we can see what directly is the impact that they're having on their field. Another way we can take a look is graphical measures of importance and productivity. So we can look at the famous H measure. So in this case, esteemed Professor Leonard Kleinrock has an H index of 47, meaning that he's published 47 papers with at least 47 citations. So a pretty good H index, if you ask me. And using this is a great first pass. So we've got a pretty good analysis of how our citations relate to each other, how they impact, and how individual people impact each other. But can we do better? So I want to propose 4 clear questions or challenges to doing this analysis that will maybe take us forward to the next stage of looking at impact and making our own research better. So the first core challenge is understanding why a paper is cited. So not all citations are equal. This is far too true. So in the first one, we have someone sort of disparaging another idea. We only cite them because we're better than them. Should that count the same as another citation? I don't know. I think it's a very interesting question. Then we have, maybe the precursory citations, where you cite everyone in your lab or everyone who's come before you or your advisor, just sort of in passing. How do those citations measure up when we're counting impact? We have things where we've built upon something. It seems maybe like the most fundamental kind of citation, where you're taking someone's research and you're creating something new, but it's derivative. And then maybe we have something where you're building upon your own work. So these are clear ideas that this is what I work on in terms of linguistic analysis. Can we track this impact by looking at the language people use to describe other works? As a second challenge, we have the problem of assigning credit to multi-author papers. So in this is actually just a fraction of the 800-something authors that this paper has. It's terrifying. I didn't even know these existed, but they do. Someone's going to cite that paper. How do we divvy up the credit? I mean, does C. Queso get as much as Ramirez over here? I don't know. I don't even know what they did. So assigning credit where credit is due is a really interesting problem in terms of measuring impact if you're actually going to use citation networks for this. So third challenge. Science isn't static. That's one of the beauties of it. There's always this research frontier that's moving forward with new ideas, new people, such as myself, maybe coming in, publishing my ideas. And you want to ask, how does that impact my impact or someone else's impact? So going back to that graph that we looked at earlier about information retrieval, we see, again, Gregory Salton, huge, massive impact, where the size of this cluster talks about how much impact they had. But if we're looking over here in like 2005, maybe this B. Corin over here is probably the person we want to say is having the most recent impact. And maybe we should consider them potentially if we're looking for who to look to next for the next big idea. So impacts come and they go. And analyzing this in a temporal aspect is really important, I think. And then fourth, the last one I want to talk about is minding the relationships. So if I think about me citing some papers, how do those papers relate to each other? I could potentially have an idiosyncratic citation pattern where none of the papers relate to each other. I'm just sort of citing willy-nilly. I could have this idea where I'm citing people within my field, and it turns out those people also just talk about each other. And so it's just kind of this big intercollected click in a graph. But then you can also think we have this other pattern. We have this brokerage where I'm taking two different communities and I'm creating something new. Can we analyze this to find something important? So the idea is predicting future work. So say that we have two communities, they're not related to each other, and we see these new things come in that draw them together. So is this a new idea, a new research topic? I don't know. But can we predict these types of citations, these types of ideas by looking at the citation graph? I think it's a clear opportunity for us as researchers to identify areas where our expertise can draw upon two new topics and make a huge difference by creating something new. So in conclusion, I want to answer the question as best I can. And that an idea's impact depends not only on the quality, but how well it's connected to other ideas. Thank you.
All right. The judges are going to give their final comments. While that's happening, there we go. You can start thinking about votes.
So this was an example of a very well-structured presentation, well presented, a clear idea, clear focus. I really can't criticize it all. I think it's all praiseworthy. But then again, you've had a lot of experience with this, so I'm going to discount that a little bit. But well done, well structured, very nicely done.
I actually disagree with Len a little bit on that. I got bored during the history portion of the talk, and when you pulled it together with the iPod, I thought it was kind of a cheap joke. So that's a risk. You built that up to such a level that actually executing it and sort of executing it impressively was difficult. I think for a lot of people in the room, as you heard, it worked. For me, no. I would say, again, don't suck up to the judges. You can have him on the slide, but then don't then call him esteemed. Like, that's just like icing on the cake. So, this is something to be aware of, because it's very tempting for those of us who are junior to suck up to the people in the room who are senior, but that also has effect on everybody in the room who is not the senior person. And it's that effect that you have to worry about. Finally, I would say, in terms of content, you began the presentation, I thought, by asking me to think about how my research is going to impact science. And then you ended by saying that you then developed a methodology for describing the impact of others. I was much more interested in the first question than in the question that you ended up developing. Of course, you are obviously a very good speaker.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much. Agree that the history, I actually liked the history ending, but it just took a little too long for a 10-minute presentation. I think it could have been faster and concentrated more on that. You also are touching on the whole area of network science, which I think there's a lot that is being done out there, and I would have liked to have had a little bit more correlation to what else is being done out there compared to what you're doing. So, but it was a good presentation.
All right.
And all of you, thank you so much.
Thank you to our judges and everyone. All right, we have tabulated the scores. So what I'm going to do is, okay, I'm going to read off the orders. Accumulating, oh, I see. I didn't see we had more checks. So we will write your names on the checks as we present you with the prizes. So in 6th place, we have Sahil Shah. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Never mind. Psych, no. In 6th place, we have Jayashri Nagarajan. I'm sorry about that. Too many numbers on this piece of paper. And just go ahead and stay here, and we'll take pictures afterwards. 5th place, we have Sahil Shah. In 4th place, Gautam Prasad. Third place goes to Ravi Srinivas Ranganathan. Second place goes to Paul Ways. And first place, you know him and love him, Dave Jurgens. And Dr. Kohler is going to present the special judges' prizes.
There was tremendous controversy among the judges. There was a war. But in the end, we agreed. The award for the best substance in these presentations goes to Paul Weiss. Congratulations. And the award for a best presentation, after some discussion and consideration of a number of factors, goes to Ravi Ranganathan for being a natural young presenter.
Hold up, face on over. All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Dr. Pineda for giving us our fabulous judges. And we'll see you next year. All right. Submit next year. If you want this to continue happening, join CSGSC. Yeah. You're all in. All right. Thank you.
And volunteers.
And do you have the volunteers there? Yeah.
I really like it.
Volunteers that work
Tried to find the
here.
most smug picture I could.
Yeah, no, he's, yeah.
It's actually
You sell this on the street. It's about that's the street now.
Take it.